call me Crazy Joe, but now they can call me Batman.
What up? Welcome back once again to the Necro Zoo. I am Bone. And in this one, let's go ahead and add one more figure to my McFarlane DC Multiverse collection. Now, today we will take a look at the highly anticipated Starfire figure. Now, everybody should know who this character is. She is a core member of the Teen Titans. She has been around for a long time in the DC Comics lore, changing slightly over time, but always being a very sought after character, and she definitely has some allure to her. Now, I know a lot of the collectors that wanted more female figures are really excited to get her. She is part of the collector series from McFarlane. Now, I did end up picking up 3 of her, so I have this one to review, but I also have 2 still in box. One I will be keeping in my mint in-box collection, and one I will be holding on to, probably for some customizing in the future. But really excited to take a look at her. It's been a while. I've been sitting on her for a couple of weeks. I've had her, just haven't gotten the right time to do the review, but now it is time. Now she does look pretty furious in the packaging, but let's go ahead and take a closer look at her. But first, she does come with your standard McFarlane flight stand. Now this is the clear version, which you do connect together. You could use the clear stand on its own, or you can add the gripping arm to make a nice flight stand and, pose up your figures, but we'll hold on to this one. I do have a lot of those, and I do not use one in my displays, but they're always fun to have if I ever need them. Now she does come with her Datafall card. On the front, you have a certain image of Corian from the comics. Not too certain why they picked this version. This one has more, straightened hair. The costume is very reminiscent, but there are tons of images of her online. A lot of, sexy fan art, which is always very interesting and appealing to the eye. And on the back, you do have some information. Pretty sweet. We'll hold on to this. Now, aside from that, you also get the card stand. Now, if you guys know me at all, you know how I feel about these. Not really a big fan. Those are also starting to stack up on me, where I just have a box and I just throw them in there. So I don't really consider that an accessory, but I do think that we knew when McFarlane started this collector line that it was going to be characters more sought after by collectors. So McFarlane kind of has us in a tight spot between a rock and a hard spot, because we do want the characters, but a lot of people don't like that elevated collector series price. Now, me for one, if I do not really enjoy the character, I usually just buy one, sit on it for a while, and then look for another. But since I knew this figure was going to be really sought after, I went ahead and picked up 3. It just depends on the character and the figure and if it appeals to me. Now, you also receive her energy effects. At first, I was, trying to figure out where I saw these before. These are sort of a lime green transparent plastic, and they do attach onto her fist to get a little bit of energized action. Now, I finally figured out where they where I saw them before, and that was from the Blight Atomic version from Batman Beyond. Now, these are a little bit more of a jello green, which I kind of prefer. If put these on her, it looks a little bit better, a little bit more comic accurate, as you could see from the back of the box. I just had, fun putting these on her. But either way, it's just an energy effect which accentuates your figure photography and the way you put her up in your display. But sadly, that is all that we received. Now, I would have enjoyed some alternate hands, although these hands you can tell are a new mold. But I was able to figure out some alternate hands for her. We'll take a look at that later on in the video. But let's take a closer look at this really beautiful figure. Just first impressions, which I always go off on, they did a really great job. Now, one thing is this is reused from other figures, but there is some differences. We'll take a look at that as well. But just going off first impressions, really great looking Starfire figure. There is new sculpt where it is needed, but you can still see the parts you can easily see that were reused from figures from before. But besides that, really happy to add her to the collection, and she does look really nice. Right away, of course, you could see that gorgeous flowing hair, pretty much fuego, quite literally, some fire hair, beautiful. And her costume is very reminiscent of the comics and even her other appearances in different forms of entertainment. So, not disappointed at all. She does look really, really good. Taking a closer look at the head sculpt, once again, they knocked it out of the park with this one. Just a very nicely done head sculpt. Love the glowing green eyes. Very, very well done face sculpt. She's very attractive. Love it. Looks great. Cannot complain. You have a little bit of that hair flowing in front to give her, a little bit of sass, but you can move it to the side to get a better look at that face sculpt. Great. Very sensuous lips. That is where you hold a lot of power. Really worth the wait. I'm really happy with the head sculpt. Now, going into this, I know her articulation at the head is going to be limited because of this big mane of hair, but she can look down rather well. Of course, looking up is going to be a no-go, but you can twist her hair and kind of get her to look up a little bit to a certain direction and a certain degree. You do got right to left rather smoothly, and she can tilt her head to give her a little bit of attitude. Once again, though, 10 out of 10 on the head sculpt and the execution of the hair. Really, really love it. Works really well. Let's take a look at the waist articulation. Now you do have side to side. You have that full tilt-a-whirl at the waist, gives you a lot of range. You got a lower waist swivel, upper chest swivel, kind of stiff, but it is there. And you can twist her, get her in some cool poses. Now, as far as front crunch goes, a little bit limited. She does have a slight front crunch. And what I have recently figured out with these figures is before I was really tenuous on doing the mod to the waist. I just hated having to heat them up and pull them apart and get the Dremel in there. But what I've come to realize is that on a lot of the figures, you heat it up, you pull it apart, and you just have to gouge out, this front lower waist portion. You don't need the Dremel. You could do it with a blade, and it gives them a lot of full crunch. Now, when you pop this one off, you do notice that they kind of didn't give you any room to do any blading or taking off any plastic. So you are going to have to go with the Dremel. Now, what you want to do is just make a notch that will fit the peg that's in there and allow it to go forward. Once you do this, though, she does have a very generous forward crunch, almost collapsing down into a seating position, which allows you to twist her up, giving you way more options once you do that waist mod. Now, it's not for everybody, but I decided to do it since I do have an extra one of these figures. So basically, this is going to be my custom version. But it did work really well. Like I said, gives her slight more articulation at the waist, allowing you to get her in better poses. Taking a look at the shoulders, she has really tight socket bushings, so you don't get a lot of movement as you usually do with other figures. You still get some up and down and some front to back. Really smooth bicep cut. Double jointed elbows look really nice. And then moving down, aesthetically, it looks really good from the shoulder into the arm and moving down to the wrist. Have some really nice sculpted out wrist joints. And of course, you have the 4 ways of articulation that McFarlane gives you. On the other side, of course, you have another fist. And it was that was one of the big things is no alternate hands. But I have a little tip I'll give you guys later on. T-pose really smoothly. Arms above the head. Nice. Costume is really well done. I love how they added the sort of amulet here, the green stone on her chest, going down to the rest of her costume. Really nothing to complain about. All the details are there. The trunks are completely new and it looks really seamless. Not too much in thigh swivel. It is there. I'm sure if you heat her up, you could get a little bit more, but what you can do is move her boot from side to side without having a thigh cut. Although I really think this is a perfect opportunity to add a thigh cut because you have those boots, those thigh highs, where you could have made a clean cut. In fact, I may end up doing that with her since this is my custom version, but we'll wait and see. Now she can kick up really high because of those soft trunks, and she can kick back as well. Now the trunks do bunch up, but when you put her leg back down, they go back to their original shape. Now I may look also into cutting her trunks just to give her a little bit more of an appealing cut to her trunks, showing a little bit more cheek. So I may end up doing that. That's not a big deal. She does have that McFarlane thigh swivel, double jointed knees, straighten her out up and down at the ankle, right to left, rocker, and of course, toe articulation. Before we go, let's take a complete look at that lower body. Really great reuse of parts, but there are differences that we will take a look at here pretty shortly. Nice stiletto boots, we've seen them before. Now the ankle joints could look a little bit large and cumbersome, but for some reason they really work on these figures. That has a clean sculpt line, looks really nice, so nothing to complain about there. Taking a look at her from the bottom, no tread and no identifying marks. Moving up the back, nice detail on the boots, except we've seen it before, but it looks good. Up into the booty, and a nice bootay it is. And then into that beautiful hair. I just love that hair. Looks really good, especially the two-tone where it has more of a dirty blonde color and then goes into a sort of pinkish red and then into a deeper, almost pastel red at the top. Ah, that's one of my favorite parts of this figure. Now, speaking of that, the hair does kind of weigh her a little bit. Not too much, but she is a little bit of a chore to stand. Now, what I always say is she's not going to stand on her own. You're going to have to manipulate everything, the boots, the waist, her head, all of this, put together will allow you to stand her pretty easily. And another thing you might try is heating up her ankle joints and flipping them over. A lot of times that works where the ratchet doesn't allow you to stand her. When you reverse it, it kind of gives a little bit more leeway and allows for some easier standing of the figures. All in all, awesome figure. Really happy to add her to the collection. Like I said, you can use the effects, put her in poses. She's really posable, very aesthetically pleasing body shape. Awesome, awesome figure. Now, she does reuse parts from Nightfall Catwoman, but if you put them side by side, you can actually identify the differences. Let's start from the boots and go up. Same boots, same stilettos, all the way up to the thighs. Now, the thigh parts are different. Catwoman has a costume seam right on her side, and these do not have it. The trunks are different. While the lower abdomen piece is the same, the whole upper chest is different. They are not reused. You can tell it just has different sculpted lines. And of course, they added that stone on her costume. So they didn't skimp out there. They did do a whole new sculpt for the upper chest. And once again, while the arm sleeves are the same, the shoulders are different. They have different sculpting lines. You could just see that they are different. They are not reuse. And while the wrist joints are the same, the gloves are a completely new sculpt. They have these really small knuckle dusters on them. And that's something that I saw when I was going to look for some alternate hands for her. And as I said, not completely 100% reuse. She does have about 60% new sculpt in her design, which is awesome. The hands were just something I really wanted to have for her. So I had to start looking at where I could get some hands. And if you don't know, I did end up buying two Wally West from the Infinite Crisis Wave. Now, one of the big negatives about that figure was the little tiny hands that he had. This is the main reason why the one I have on display, I do not have those little hands. I replaced them with the hands from Red Tornado, which really fit the figure a lot better. So I had these two little tiny open hands that I found fit really well with this figure. They're small enough, they're open, so you could kind of get some gesturing out of it. Now, the first thing I had to do was add the little knuckle dusters. The way I did this was I've used Death Metal Batman for different customs. So I had one of his legs laying around. And if you slice the little studs that are throughout his costume, you do get that little knuckle duster effect, kind of like the top of a pyramid. So I just made a big one and reduced in size all the way down to the last knuckle. Glued them on, as you can see here. It turned out pretty good. And then all I had to do was match the paint. Now, this is a little bit of a art form. You do have to see colors in there that you add to sort of match. I did end up matching it pretty well. Not exactly. It matches a little bit more with like the color of purple on her chest than it does really with her sleeves. But for my purposes, it works really well. Painted it, hit it with a matte sealer, and added them to her hands. Now, you do have to add something to the peg because these are wider portholes, but I just added a little strip of tape and was able to slide these on. Now, these could be used for figure photography or posing her, which is just a quick little fix to giving her some alternate hands. But really happy with them. They worked out really well, and I could use them whenever the opportunity comes up. Now, one thing I did want to do is I wanted to go back to my DC Universe Classics version of Starfire, and this will just show you like how far we've come. Not to hate on this figure, it was pretty nice in its time, but I always was not a big fan of it. This did come in a 2-pack with Adam Strange, but as you could see, it's just not as appealing as this one is. They did use her very old retro costume, which basically has her like half naked on there, and some of the details are just painted on, like the boots, but that's per usual with DC Universe Classics. But I will give them this, they did go all out and add some of the amulets and really go with that old bikini costume, which you're not going to see in this day and age. But she does have her flaws. One, of course, being what I brought up in my DC Classics versus DC Multiverse from McFarlane video. And that was that her face sculpt is a little bit flat. It looks like smashed in. And that goes for a lot of DC Universe Classics figures. They did a great job on the hair. But she does have a little sort of freaky body type. Um, Her legs are really bold. The waist looks kind of wide for her. And of course, it has that archaic waist articulation that looks really terrible once you try and pose it in any sort of way. But like I said, I will give them props that they went for this version of Starfire, but I really prefer this DC Multiverse version. Now, to have some fun, you can also display her with Raven and Donna Troy that we have received from McFarlane. Two okay figures. I mean, they didn't blow me away like this one did. The Raven one is very nice, but I wish they would have gone with a different costume. While the Donna Troy, although very voluptuous and she has a great stature, the face sculpt was, left a little bit to be desired, but I still accept her and have her in my collection. And of course, you can always display her with Nightwing, who she is a really big fan of for some reason. Dick Grayson, that lucky bastard. So she's always hanging around with Nightwing. They are a off and on again couple. But this just opens up all of the possibilities that you have with displaying her with figure photography, which is a huge part of the fun of collecting this DC Multiverse line. So, anyways, guys, really awesome figure. Really enjoyed reviewing her. She is going to be a little bit hard to find. It's starting to get where you're not able to find her. Your last shot is going to be out there in the wild hunting. And then you got to start looking into the aftermarket, which is never fun at all. But she is a beautiful figure. Really happy to get her. Really happy to get more females into the DC Multiverse line. But you guys, keep hunting out there. Keep collecting. Keep customizing. And I will see you on the next one.
They used to call me Crazy Joe, but now they can call me Batman.